Hey there everyone, I'm that Scottish nerd that brings you Pokemon TCG content. I do bring you that content multiple times a week, so if you're interested in the Pokemon TCG, be sure to subscribe down below. In today's video, we're having a look at Dragapult VMAX, as well as some of the partner Pokemon that I've decided to pair it up with. So if you want to skip ahead to some of the matches, then there are timestamps down below, but first up we have the deck profile. Here is my current Dragapult VMAX deck list along with the partner Pokemon. It's a little bit of an unusual deck admittedly, but we'll get into the reasoning behind that. Starting off with the Dragapult VMAX itself, I do have the nice shiny versions here, but the main attack that we're going to be looking at is Max Phantom for 2 Psychic Energy. You deal 130 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, but then you also get to deal 5 damage counters to any of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So this is great for setting up knockouts on various Pokemon, or if you want to put 5 damage counters all into one Pokemon, you can do that, but you can also split it up. It's very versatile, although the 130 to the active is a little bit low in my opinion compared to some of the attacks from other VMAX Pokemon. Then we also have the Shred attack, and for 1 Psychic Energy dealing 60. It's not particularly great, but if you need to get through any effects or abilities, anything like that, then you can do that with Shred, which is a nice little bonus. We also have the Dragapult here, the basic V version. Doesn't have amazing stats, but the second attack here, Jet Assault, for 2 Psychic Energy does 60 and then an additional 80 if this Pokemon moved to the active spot. So with the amount of switching and retreating that we have in this deck, this is actually a pretty viable attack and can be nice as it does deal 140 damage, so that 10 damage can be a difference maker. And then the supporting Pokemon that we're going to be dealing extra damage with is the Orbeetle VMAX. I just love this Pokemon and I really want to make it work in as many decks as possible. If you're not familiar, the Eerie Beam Ability allows you to put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So using this, trying to get it multiple times in a turn, so we have 2 set up and then we can switch between them and then go into our Dragapult. This is going to spread a lot of damage onto our opponent's board, as well as set up knockouts in the active spot. And then going and even furthering that, comboing with it even further, we have the Urshifu VMAX here. A lot of people have been playing this with Dragapult, but we've cut it down to a 1-1 line so that we can put Orbeetle in, and still making use of this so that we can cover our weaknesses against Eternatus. But in general, since we do have so many switching cards, it just makes sense being able to use the first attack to deal 150 damage for a single attachment, and then going for a second attachment onto Urshifu as well, we can make use of G-Max Rapid Flow in order to deal 120 to 2 of our opponent's Pokemon. And again, this is just great for sniping, taking out Pokemon very easily, and it will be easy as we do have a bunch of damage built up from Eerie Beam as well as the attack on the Dragapult Max Phantom. So going through some of the other supporting Pokemon, we have 1 Dedenne, 1 Crobat, as well as the 1 Latios here. It's not an amazing Pokemon, but I did want to include it since it does have a free retreat, so it's great for when we're switching constantly, and we might be able to make use of Clear Vision. If we're able to get enough Pokemon into play, we can use that to stop our opponent from using a GX attack, but mainly it's just a nice free retreater and you're typically not going to be using it all that often. Then the trainer lineup, we have just a bunch of consistency. We have our Quick Balls, Evolution Incense and Pokemon Communication, all to search out our Pokemon. And then as I mentioned, we have lots of Switch cards, so we have 4 copies of Switch, 3 Escape Rope, and then a couple of copies of U-Turn Board in order to give us free retreat on our Orbeetle VMAX when we are switching into them so often. And then for the supporters, we have a couple of copies of Birdkeeper as well for even more switching. And then of course our standard Professor's Research and Marnie's, as well as Boss's Orders to bring things up. And we are also playing the 2 count of the Rapid Strike Energy in order to get that attached onto our Urshifu. As I mentioned, we just need 1 of these in order to deal that big 150 damage. And this is going to be great deck overall for hitting weakness on other Urshifus, even hitting weakness on things like Mewtwo, as you can deal 130, which is doubled with the weakness, 260. Then you only need the 2 Eerie Beams from Orbeetle to take out something with 280, or Mewtwo only has 270, so you only need one Eerie Beam there. And yeah, just overall very strong deck, spreading a lot of damage, putting a lot of pressure onto your opponent since you are attacking so efficiently as well, which is great. So really been enjoying playing this deck, and hopefully you enjoy the video as well. Be sure to give it a like if you do, and let's get into a couple of matches and see how we get on with the deck. Starting this match, we have a pretty poor start as we do have the Crobat and the Denny in our opening hand here. We're going to be losing to Switch, but I want to go for the Daily Change so we can hopefully see maybe a Dragapult as well as an Energy. We do get the Quick Balls here, so we can at least search for a Pokemon. Unfortunately, just finding the Rapid Strike Energy, so we're going to be forced into using the Urshifu here, assuming of course that is in the deck, but it is there. We are just missing the VMAX for it though, but at least we have our Dragapults and the Orbeetles in the deck, so we can still attach, and we will be able to make use of the Urshifu at some point, I'm sure. Even if we get the VMAX off of the prizes, then we at least have the Urshifu there as a threat at some point in the game. My opponent is playing a Sandaconda deck here. They have the Silicobra, and they're going to be using the Greens Exploration, going and grabbing themselves another Greens as well as a Level Ball. So they're going to take a little bit of time here to try and get set up through the use of Greens. They are getting the Pokemon here, I forgot his name, the Gossifleur, that's it, the one that evolves into Eldegoss. I know that much, but Gossifleur has Call for Family, as you've seen here, so they're able to attach an energy onto it, get 3 basic Pokemon into play, but they don't have a switch from the looks of things, and they're just wanting to protect that Gossifleur for now. So we do get into a Dragapult, which is good. I love to see that, and we also get the U-turn board, which I will be attaching. Then we can make use of Professor's Research here, hoping for an energy to get that down, and we even get into an Orbeetle, which is fantastic. So we'll be attaching these. We can even put the Chaotic Swell into play. I highly doubt my opponent is going to be playing a lot of Stadium cards, considering 30 or around 30 cards, probably about half of their deck is going to be energy cards, so we shouldn't have too much of an issue there. We could always go for the Escape Rope and bring up that Gossifleur, but I think we want to be hitting into the active and taking out Silicobra or Sandaconda as quickly as possible. We do have the Sandaconda in their hand, so as long as they have the energy, which they should do considering the amount of energy that they play, as I just said, they will be getting a knockout here. They only need to hit 2 energy since we do have Fighting Weakness. And if you're not familiar, the Sandaconda here, you're able to look at the top 6 cards of your deck, and for each fighting energy there, you're able to deal 60 damage. So up to 360 damage total. Definitely going to be playing a lot of energy in order to get that amount of energy on the top of your deck. But as you can see, my opponent did a lot of damage in order to knock out that Crobat, way more than they needed to. And of course it's going to be getting a knockout for them, so we can promote something here. I think we're going to put up the Orbeetle, since we do have the opportunity to actually get the VMAX into play, since we have the Evolution Incense, as well as the U-turn board to go along with that. So we'll get our Orbeetle VMAX out, and we're just going to be digging for the energy here, and also having a look at the Sandaconda. Once again, it has 130 hit points, so we should be having no difficulty getting a knockout as long as we find the energy. So we'll attach the U-turn board and go for Marty. And like I said, let's just cross our finger. Yep, there's the energy. That's definitely all that we needed. We can even put down a second Dragapult. Not that we're most likely going to need it, but at least it's there as an option. And we can retreat into our Dragapult VMAX and go for the knockout. And we also get those 5 counters onto the Gossifleur as well, which is going to get a knockout since we did use the Orbeetle to put 10 damage on everything. So nice little game there, and we'll move on to the next one. Getting into this match, we do have a pretty good start this time around, though we don't have a great choice in supporter cards. Starting off with the Dragapult as well as the Orbeetle down early is excellent to see. And we do have a Dragapult VMAX as well, which we can make use of, which is very good. We'll be attaching the U-turn board to active and then retreating before we can use Bird Keeper, just so that we can get back into the Orbeetle and draw 3 cards from there. We get a Quick Ball, which we could make use of here. We do have double research, so we might as well get rid of one of these, and we can grab ourselves another Pokemon. I think we'll go for something like a probably another Orbeetle. We do already have the Dragapult, so we don't really need another one of those unless we want to get another Dragapult VMAX set up, but we should be fine for the time being. Don't quite know what my opponent is playing just yet, so we'll hold off on getting Urshifu down, and we'll just go for this for now and pass over to my opponent. If we draw into another Pokemon, then that's great, we can use Pokemon Communication, but otherwise we will just be evolving and looking to find that second energy with the Professor's Research that we have here. My opponent is going to be playing a Escape Rope down of their own. I think we're fine here just to go into the Dragapult, since we will be attacking assuming we get the energy. Since my opponent doesn't have any threats down on the board, I don't feel too bad about promoting the Dragapult here. Let's see what my opponent has. If they have anything, they're just going to be passing back over to us, so my opponent's hand is completely dead here. And we're going to be looking to capitalize on this as much as possible and get a whole load of damage in on the Crobat before my opponent is able to get set up whatsoever. We do get into the energy here as well, which is definitely what we want. We can put the Dragapult down, and I think we could even switch here and try and look for the Orbeetle VMAX just to get that extra bit of damage in, as well as just generally setting it up. So we'll go for the Daddy change, see if we can get into the Orbeetle VMAX, and we do indeed get that as we do have the Evolution Incense here. So we can grab ourselves the Orbeetle. We might even grab both of them actually, since we do have the option to do that, and it seems reasonable, thinning out the deck of a couple more Pokemon. So we can get a little bit of damage, 10 damage in with the Eerie Beam, and then retreat into our Dragapult and get a further 130 damage in. So we will be able to get a knockout on this following turn, and we can see if my opponent promotes anything or gets anything going out of this hand that they've got. They have a Pokemon Communication. They're going to be putting in a Houndoom, so they're playing a single strike deck. Looks like it's just a bit unfortunate that they're completely dead wrong here, and they go for the Denny. Being able to draw cards is definitely going to be good, and yeah, their hand was just completely dead here, so Pokemon Communication, or the Pokemon they got, really bailing them out and getting them into a new hand because their hand was completely useless. We see the Urshifu coming down on my opponent's side, so we are going to have to be a little careful here, since they are going to be able to deal a lot of damage with the Urshifu VMAX. But considering that we are a Psychic type attacking deck for the most part, we're going to be able to hit the Urshifu for a weakness, and that's really what you're going to be capitalizing on the most with Dragapult. It's taking advantage of all of these Pokemon that are weak to Psychic at the moment. Particularly the Urshifus, but even people playing Mewtwo, for example, you're going to be able to hit those for weakness very easily and get easy one-hit knockouts. So my opponent used the Marnie, which is perfectly fine for me. We have a pretty good hand that we've got into here. We have an Escape Rope as well as a Bird Keeper. So I think we will go for the Escape Rope here, force something out of my opponent so that we can deal damage to it rather than putting all of our damage into the Crobat, as well as being able to snipe and put some extra damage around my opponent's board. So going into the first Orbeetle, we can use Eerie Beam, and then we'll also make use of the Bird Keeper and go into the second Orbeetle, which already has the U-turn board, and make use of the second Eerie Beam here, so getting an extra 20 damage in, really showing off how effective the switches are in this deck, being able to use the multiple Orbeetles that we have. We'll also get the second Dragapult here. Definitely could have got something else through the use of Pokemon Communication, but just getting down another Dragapult is going to be great for us. Just a bit unfortunate that we've missed out on energy, and we will just be attacking into my opponent's Dedenne, dealing 130 damage, and then we can put the rest of the damage that we need onto this Crobat here, so 20 damage goes onto Crobat, and then we can put some damage, I think, onto the Urshifu, so that we can actually get an easier knockout on this, since the VMAX is going to have a lot of HP. So to get the VMAX down on this following turn, we want to be able to be ready for that and get an easy knockout on it. So there's another Dragapult off of the prizes, as well as a switch, which is great, so we can make use of the Orbeetle's Eerie Beam. That will allow us to get a knockout on this Dedenne before we even have a attack for this following turn. But that's going to mean if my opponent does go into the Urshifu, we can get a win really next this turn. But if they do get the VMAX, then they are building up the energy here, so it's looking a little bit sketchy as we don't have a backup Dragapult at this stage just yet. We're going to be putting down the Mew, which doesn't actually stop us since we are placing damage counters from both of our ability and our attack from Dragapult and Orbeetle respectively. And they do get the switch, so they can go into the Jirachi here and use Stellar Wish, search out a trainer card from the top 5 cards of their deck. They're getting a Professor's Research here. That's going to allow them to draw some cards on the following turn. They also use the Vial Urn thing, the urn, in order to put special energies back in, and they're going to switch into the Urshifu, so they're hoping to get the VMAX here, and they are themselves playing Evolution Incense, grabbing the Houndoom though, rather than the Urshifu VMAX. So perhaps they don't have it, but they're getting the Pokemon communication, so they do in fact have it, putting the Urshifu V back into the deck. It looks like my opponent has prized all of their VMAXs, as they don't have any in the deck, because they definitely would have grabbed it there, and they're going to be settling for dealing 190 damage. That is a bit of a shame for my opponent, as it's not going to be enough really for them to do anything. We have the switch, so we can switch into our Orbeetle with the U-turn board already, and that's going to allow us to deal that 10 damage onto all of my opponent's board, get the knockout on the Dedenne there, and then we can just retreat into the Dragapult and get the knockout with the Dragapult, because as I said, they're weak to Psychic, so it's going to be no difficult task for us to get a knockout, dealing twice as much damage what we needed. Then we can also still put damage counters onto this Mew, just for the sake of it I guess, since it is mandatory to put damage counters, so we just turned this into a 7 prize game there. But yeah, really showing off how powerful this deck is, especially when you're hitting for weakness, as well as getting those multiple Eerie Beams in with the amount of switch cards that we have. Getting into our last match here of the video, we do have a pretty reasonable starting hand. We can use the Pokemon communication here to put the VMAX back into the deck, and we can get ourselves a Dragapult V to work with. I think I might just actually hold this hand rather than use Dead Exchange, since we do have the Orbeetle VMAX in our opening hand. I would like to get that into play rather than put it into the discard pile, especially if we are going to be losing our Ordinary Rod. It doesn't really make sense to lose both our Ordinary Rod and a Pokemon. My opponent is using a Welder based deck, but they're attaching to every Pokemon which isn't a fire Pokemon here. So they've got a Crobat and a Kricketune, which they're going to be attaching to. We're getting hit with a reset stamp, which is really unfortunate, losing that hand. So we did have a pretty good start, but we do get the Ordinary Rod back into the deck at the very least. And my opponent doesn't have a lot going on. We have the Chaotic Swell, which makes sense to put into play, since my opponent will most likely be playing a Giant Hearth if it is a fire based deck. And we have a couple of options here certainly, so I think we'll go for the Evolution Incense, so we can grab ourselves a Orbeetle VMAX. Definitely want to get that into play here, and we can switch into it so that we can start using the Eerie Beam, as well as attach a Psychic Energy onto our Dragapult. Might as well make use of Eerie Beam now while I remember. And we have a Quick Ball that we can use, and we think we'll just be discarding the Rapid Strike Energy here. and grab ourselves a Dedenne so that we can get a fresh couple of cards, since we haven't actually got a supporter card in this hand, so we might still be able to get one here and draw even more cards. We get into another Dragapult. I don't think my opponent's going to be focused too much on tag team Pokemon, so I feel fine just getting rid of the Latios here. It does have free retreat, but we have plenty of switching cards left in the deck, and we don't actually have the Urshifu. Unfortunately, it is in the prizes, so we'll be taking another Orbeetle in order to make use of that. The only thing that we have to watch out for is the fact that my opponent is playing a fire Pokemon, and we could make use of switch, but I guess it's going to be worthwhile, so we'll switch into the Dragapult. Not a huge amount of damage that we're able to deal, but it's better than leaving the Orbeetle vulnerable in the active spot. And we don't get anything else that we can play here, so we will just have to settle for dealing 30 damage into my opponent's Kricketune here. We'll have to see if they're able to get into a couple of fire Pokemon to start dealing some big damage. That's definitely what they're going to be looking for here, but they're attaching a third energy onto their Crobat, and they also play down another escape rope. So I think we'll actually be promoting the Dedenne here. Much rather that gets knocked out than anything else. As I'm guessing my opponent is probably playing the Eternatus GX, or is it Heatran? Heatran GX, that's the one. Its ability allows you to move any number of fire energy onto it when it goes into the active spot. So I'm guessing they are playing that, and that's why they don't mind putting the fire energies onto some of these non-fire Pokemon. But they are just going to concede, I guess, that the Heatran GX was most likely prized. Getting into our last match here, we see a Gormandize Snorlax in my opponent's active spot. So this could be any number of decks, but looks like they're grabbing themselves a Scorbunny, so it is going to be a Cinderace, non-V, non-GX, non-Rule Box type of deck, focusing on that Cinderace, which does have a nice ability and a reasonable attack, but considering the amount of spread damage that we have, we might be able to just win this matchup. We'll have to see. We do get the Dragapult. The amount of research that we have in our hand is definitely not great, so I kind of want to just Marnie here so that we can keep some of these. I think that's just what I'm going to go for here. It's a bit unfortunate also that we had to start with the Latios, but it does have free retreat, so if we make use of things like Bird Keeper and Escape Hope, then we should be alright. And we do get into a okay hand here. We do have the energy. It's just a case of missing the supporter cards for the following turn here. So we'll pass it over to my opponent. See, hopefully the Marnie slowed them down so they're not able to get a Rare Candy and Cinderace. And we will just be looking for a supporter card ourselves off the top deck so that we can get into another energy, as well as the Dragapult VMAX here. It's going to be a sketchy matchup since we do have the Orbeetle VMAX. Of course, being a grass Pokemon, it is weak to fire, so they can easily take 3 prize cards on that Orbeetle VMAX if we put that into play. My opponent gets the capture energy here so that they can get a third Scorbunny into play, and they are just going to be using Gormandize in order to draw themselves some more cards. Now unfortunately we do get a supporter card, but it is a Bird Keeper, so we'll be forced to Bird Keeper here. I think we could retreat, but I mean if we get something else then we might have to retreat, so we'll just Bird Keeper, go into the Dragapult, see what we get into. We do get the energy and evolution incense, so actually excellent pickups here so that we can actually get our Dragapult VMAX into play and make use of that. We also get the Pokemon communication, so I think we will just be playing this down so we can really maximize our hand here and see as many cards as possible. Grabbing the Crobat. As I said, I don't really want to get rid of Ordinary Rod, but I can if I have to. And we even get into a second Evolution Incense in order to get the Orbeetle into play as well. I think the Urshifu could be good in this matchup, but yeah, it's a case of actually trying to get it into play. And we do have the Pokemon communication. I think I'll hold on to that just in case we want to use the Dedenne on the following turn. There's not really anything that we need to right now, so I will just hold on to it in case we want to use it for something else. So we can attack and get a knockout on the Snorlax, since it doesn't have a more than 130 hit points. And yeah, I think we're just going to be putting the damage onto the Scorbunny here with the energy. Makes the most sense to me. And we can put all of the damage onto there. Can't quite remember how much HP the Cinderace has, but I mean, it's going to be more than 130 anyway, so we won't be able to get a one-hit knockout, and we will need that extra spread damage, so it kind of makes sense just to put all of the spread damage onto the one Pokemon, and then we can take it from there. My opponent does promote the Scorbunny without the energy, but they do have the rare candy, so they're going to be evolving into a Cinderace here. And we can take a look at the Cinderace. It does have 170 hit points, and then that attack does 190 damage, but you have to discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. But as I said, the Libero attack, or not attack, ability, sorry, makes it so that when it becomes the active Pokemon, you can get 2 energy from the discard onto that Pokemon. So you're able to just chain these and constantly chain the attack and ability, which really helps the deck to actually function and deal 190 damage every single turn. But my opponent's going to go for a Marnie here. They've just been getting set up using things like Dedenne and Oricorio, but going for a Marnie here so that they can see different cards and stall us out a little bit. We do get into some reasonable options though, considering we can switch into a Orbeetle and force my opponent to switch out as well with the escape rope here. Might help to hinder them a little bit, we'll have to see. But they do go into the Cinderace, so they must have enough energy. Yep, here it comes. They're going to be hitting us for 190 damage, and they're even attaching a 4th energy. This is going to mean that they don't actually need to switch out on the following turn, and I think we can prevent them a little and stall them out. Depends how many switching cards, but we're going to go for the escape rope here and go into the Orbeetle, see if we can get a couple of Eerie Beams off and hopefully take some extra prize cards in the process. So we're going to get a prize on the Scorbunny. See, hopefully it's a supporter, just a switch. That's not great. Really need a supporter here so that we can actually see more cards, as we don't have a backup attacker, and we're going to get smacked for 190 damage once again by the Cinderace here, which is not great. So we're going to be attaching the U-turn board, and I think we can just I think we're going to have to just retreat into the Dragapult. That seems really bad, but we're going to have to retreat into Dragapult and start attaching to Latios perhaps. It's the only other attacker that we have available right now, so I'm going to have to start attaching onto Latios. And we could even use the escape rope again for something else out of my opponent and hit into that instead, but we have so many other options, I'm not sure what else they would really give us, so I think we could go for it though. It's not really any other option, and it at least forces a switch out of my opponent and gives us an additional prize card at the very least. So we'll go for the other escape rope and then switch back into Dragapult. This will at least give us a prize and keep it even with my opponent, and then we can also deal some extra damage. The Cinderace here does already have 10 on it, so if we put 50, that's not really going to be relevant. If we take it up to having 40 damage on it, that kind of makes sense. So we'll put 3 here, and we'll also put 1 on Dedenne, I reckon, or a couple on Dedenne. Try and get some cheeky knockouts on the Dedenne, and we'll take our 3rd prize card, just a U-turn board. We really needed a supporter card there in order to actually get going. My opponent only needs to attach another energy onto the Cinderace. They're going to be able to take a knockout on our Dragapult VMAX, and that's going to get them 3 prize cards in order to actually catch up with us in the prize race. Then all they're going to need is a couple of energy. I'm most likely guessing that they're playing Welder, perhaps. Yep, we see a Welder there, so if they're able to get a Welder as well as a couple of energy, then they could just Welder on to the Cinderace here and get another hit of 190 damage. So not looking too good. we're just going to have to retreat into a Crobat, I think. It's the only other option. Yes, we're going to be giving them more prize cards, but it's better than leaving the Orbeetle in the active spot where they can just win the game. And of course, we don't want to retreat into the Latios because we're attaching energy onto it. The other thing is, of course, we can't actually attack with the Latios unless we get enough Pokemon into play. That irritating ability makes it so that it can't attack unless there's enough Pokemon in play on our side. My opponent goes for the Escape Rope. This is not looking good because if they have a way of retreating, then they're just going to be knocking us out. So we'll have to promote the Latios, I think. If we're going with the Orbeetle, then my opponent is going to be getting a knockout and winning. And here they can just attach an energy onto the active, which is going to be all they need in order to retreat and go into that Cinderace using Libero to get 2 energy out of the discard pile onto Cinderace itself and deal 190 damage once again, taking out our Latios, which was our only hope. And now we're going to be forced into a big Pokemon while my opponent only needs to take 1 more prize card. We do finally get a supporter, but it's going to be a little too late, I reckon. So my opponent only needs 1 more prize card here. We don't even get into a Dragapult, so we can't even deal any damage whatsoever. All we can do is use Eerie Beam and pass it over to my opponent, hoping that they don't have a switch card. And yeah, that's all we can do here. Pretty sure they are going to have it, considering their hand size. They even have the giant hearth, so all they need is a switch, and then they can attach that energy and retreat. But they do just have the welder in hand as well. So that's going to be game for my opponent. We tried our best, but unfortunately we got set up just a little bit too slowly. We really needed that second Dragapult VMAX to actually get going, be able to take multiple knockouts, but taking out those score bunnies early was definitely a good game plan, and we got just a little bit from those, but not enough to actually win out the game, unfortunately. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.